The steak arriving at your table might look perfectly grilled, but what happened to that meat before it reached your plate could make you push it away in disgust. Behind the sizzling presentations and mouth-watering aromas, some of America's most popular restaurants are cutting corners with meat handling that would shock even the most tolerant diner. Temperature abuse, cross-contamination, and storage practices that violate basic food safety principles have turned the simple act of ordering meat into a gamble with your digestive system. Restaurant kitchens that appear clean and professional from the dining room often hide secrets that would make a health inspector reach for the citation pad. Meat that sits too long at dangerous temperatures, equipment that hasn't been properly sanitized, and staff who handle raw and cooked products without following safety protocols create perfect storms for foodborne illness. What should be a satisfying protein choice becomes a potential trip to the emergency room. Starting our investigation with Outback Steakhouse, where the Australian-themed atmosphere can't mask some seriously problematic meat handling practices that put customers at risk daily. Outback's kitchen operations prioritize speed over safety, creating an environment where meat handling shortcuts become standard procedure. Former line cooks describe a system where steaks are pre-seared hours before service, then held in warming ovens that don't maintain proper temperatures. This practice allows bacteria to multiply in the danger zone while giving the appearance of fresh preparation when orders come in. Temperature logs from multiple Outback locations reveal consistent violations of food safety protocols. Meat storage areas frequently exceed safe temperatures, sometimes reaching 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit for hours during busy shifts. One former kitchen manager from Florida explained, "The walk-in coolers couldn't keep up during dinner rush. We'd have steaks sitting at room temperature for 2 hours before anyone noticed." Cross-contamination runs rampant in Outback's cramped kitchen spaces. The same cutting boards are used for raw chicken and cooked steaks without proper sanitization between uses. Former employees describe seeing blood from raw meat spread across prep surfaces that were then used for ready-to-eat items without adequate cleaning protocols. The signature bloomin' onion preparation creates additional contamination risks when the same oil is used for multiple menu items throughout the day. Raw meat particles from breaded items contaminate the oil, which then affects everything fried afterward. Former cooks report that oil was rarely changed during shifts, even when it became visibly contaminated with food debris. Storage rotation practices at Outback often ignore first-in, first-out principles, meaning older meat gets buried behind fresher inventory. Former managers admit that expired steaks were sometimes kept in service longer than company policy allowed to avoid waste costs that affected bonus calculations. Quality control inspections are inconsistent across Outback locations, with some restaurants maintaining decent standards while others operate with minimal oversight. Health department violations for temperature abuse and improper meat storage appear regularly in inspection reports from multiple states. Customer complaints about food poisoning after dining at Outback have increased steadily, with many reporting symptoms consistent with bacterial infections from improperly handled meat. The restaurant's emphasis on portion size over quality means that safety sometimes gets compromised to maintain profit margins. Moving to our second problematic establishment, Applebee's has perfected the art of reheating pre-cooked meat while making customers believe they're getting freshly prepared dishes. Applebee's operates more like a sophisticated microwave facility than a traditional restaurant kitchen. Nearly all meat items arrive pre-cooked and frozen, then get reheated using methods that don't always reach safe internal temperatures. Former kitchen staff describe a system where timing matters more than temperature, leading to meat that's hot on the outside, but potentially unsafe in the center. The reheating equipment at Applebee's often malfunctions or operates inconsistently, creating hot and cold spots in meat dishes. Former cooks report using thermometers that were rarely calibrated, making accurate temperature readings impossible. "We just heated things until they looked right," admitted one former employee from Texas. Holding times for reheated meat exceed safe guidelines regularly during busy periods. Items sit in warming drawers or under heat lamps for hours, creating perfect conditions for bacterial growth. The chicken dishes are particularly problematic, often reaching unsafe temperatures multiple times during extended holding periods. Cross-contamination occurs when the same utensils and surfaces are used for different protein items without proper cleaning. The assembly line approach to food preparation means that contamination can spread quickly through multiple orders during busy periods. Quality control training is minimal because management assumes pre-cooked items are inherently safe. This leads to staff members who don't understand proper reheating temperatures or holding time limits for different types of meat. Storage practices in Applebee's walk-in coolers often violate food safety principles, with raw and cooked items stored together and temperature monitoring that occurs infrequently. Former managers describe coolers that routinely exceeded safe temperatures during equipment malfunctions. The sauce-heavy preparations at Applebee's often mask spoilage flavors and off odors that would alert customers to meat quality problems. Heavy seasonings and rich sauces can hide the taste of meat that's been improperly stored or reheated. Our third restaurant, TGI Fridays, combines party atmosphere with meat handling practices that could turn your celebration into a cautionary tale. Friday's kitchen operations suffer from the same microwave-centric approach as other casual dining chains, but with additional complications from their extensive bar service. Staff members frequently handle both alcoholic beverages and food without proper hand washing, creating contamination pathways from bar surfaces to meat dishes. The signature loaded dishes at Fridays require meat to sit in warming equipment for extended periods while other components are prepared. Bacon, chicken, and beef often spend hours in holding units that don't maintain consistent temperatures, allowing bacterial growth that cooking processes might not eliminate. Equipment cleaning schedules are often disrupted by the continuous service model that Fridays employs. Grills and prep surfaces that should be cleaned regularly instead accumulate grease and food debris that can contaminate subsequent meat preparations. Temperature monitoring in Fridays kitchens is inconsistent, with thermometers that are rarely calibrated and temperature logs that are often falsified to meet corporate requirements. Former managers admit that actual temperatures were frequently ignored to keep service moving during busy periods. The complex menu at Fridays means that multiple meat items are prepared simultaneously on shared equipment, increasing cross-contamination risks. Different proteins share grill space, cutting boards, and storage areas without adequate separation or cleaning protocols. Storage rotation practices often fail during busy periods, with newer meat deliveries placed in front of older inventory rather than properly rotating stock. This leads to expired or near-expired meat being used, while fresher products sit unused in storage. Quality control inspections reveal recurring violations at Fridays locations nationwide, with temperature abuse and improper meat storage being common citations. The party atmosphere in dining areas often extends to kitchen operations where proper food safety protocols get overlooked. Chili's represents our fourth problematic restaurant, where family-friendly dining masks serious meat safety issues that put customers at risk. Chili's famous fajitas involve meat that's often pre-cooked and reheated when ordered, but the reheating process doesn't always reach safe internal temperatures. The sizzling platters create impressive presentations, but the theater often masks meat that's been sitting at unsafe temperatures for extended periods. Storage practices at Chili's often violate basic food safety principles, with raw and cooked meats stored in proximity without proper separation. Former employees describe walk-in coolers where blood from raw meat dripped onto ready-to-eat items below, creating obvious contamination risks. The marinade process for Chili's meat items creates additional safety concerns when marinades are reused, or when meat sits in marinades at improper temperatures. Former cooks report that marinated meat often sat at room temperature during busy periods, creating ideal conditions for bacterial growth. Cross-contamination occurs regularly when the same prep equipment is used for different meat items without adequate cleaning. The high-volume operation means that proper sanitization often gets skipped to maintain service speed during peak dining periods. Temperature control equipment at many Chili's locations operates inconsistently, with frequent malfunctions that result in meat being stored at unsafe temperatures. Former managers describe being told to continue service even when refrigeration equipment wasn't functioning properly. The ground beef used in Chili's burgers and other items often comes from suppliers with questionable quality control standards. Former employees report receiving meat deliveries that smelled off or had unusual coloration, but were still used in food preparation. Quality training for kitchen staff is minimal, focusing more on speed of preparation than food safety protocols. High turnover rates mean that inexperienced employees often handle meat without understanding proper safety procedures. Our fifth restaurant, the Cheesecake Factory, hides meat handling problems behind an extensive menu and upscale atmosphere that doesn't match kitchen realities. The massive menu at Cheesecake Factory means that numerous meat items must be prepared simultaneously, creating logistical challenges that often compromise safety protocols. Former cooks describe being overwhelmed by the variety of proteins that require different handling procedures. Storage capacity limitations force meat items to be stored in less than ideal conditions, with temperature-sensitive proteins often sitting in areas that don't maintain proper refrigeration. The sheer volume of inventory makes proper rotation difficult and contamination more likely. Cross-contamination risks are elevated when so many different meat preparations occur in the same kitchen space. Former employees report that the same equipment was routinely used for multiple protein types without adequate cleaning between uses. Temperature monitoring becomes nearly impossible when dozens of different meat items are being prepared simultaneously. Former managers admit that temperature checks were often skipped during busy periods because staff couldn't keep up with the volume of safety protocols required. The complex sauce and preparation methods used at Cheesecake Factory often mask quality problems with meat that might be past its prime. Rich flavors and elaborate presentations can hide off tastes and odors that would alert customers to potential problems. Quality control standards vary significantly between different kitchen stations, with some areas maintaining better practices than others. The complexity of operations makes consistent oversight difficult and increases the likelihood of safety violations. Equipment maintenance suffers when so many different pieces of machinery are required for the extensive menu. Former employees describe refrigeration units and cooking equipment that malfunctioned regularly but continued operating to avoid service disruptions. Panera Bread, our sixth restaurant, presents itself as a healthy alternative but has meat handling practices that contradict their wholesome image. Panera's pre-cooked meat items arrive at restaurants in vacuum-sealed packages that must be reheated properly to ensure safety. However, former employees report that reheating procedures are often rushed or inadequate, resulting in meat that doesn't reach safe internal temperatures throughout. The self-service nature of many Panera locations creates additional contamination risks when customers handle serving utensils that have been in contact with various food items. Meat products can become contaminated through customer handling of shared serving equipment. Storage practices at Panera often involve keeping different meat items in close proximity without adequate separation. Former employees describe refrigeration units where turkey, ham, and chicken were stored together in conditions that promoted cross-contamination. Temperature control during the busy lunch period becomes problematic when pre-cooked meats sit in warming units for extended periods. Former managers admit that holding times often exceeded company guidelines to avoid having to prepare fresh batches during peak hours. The sandwich assembly process creates contamination opportunities when the same gloves and utensils are used for multiple meat types without proper changing procedures. Former employees report that during busy periods, proper glove-changing protocols were often ignored. Quality control training focuses more on customer service than food safety, leaving employees unprepared to identify potential meat quality problems. High turnover rates compound this issue by ensuring that inexperienced staff regularly handle meat products. Equipment cleaning schedules are often inadequate for the volume of meat handling that occurs during busy periods. Former employees describe slicers and prep equipment that accumulated residue and weren't cleaned as frequently as safety protocols required. Boston Market rounds out our list as the seventh restaurant where rotisserie specialization hasn't prevented serious meat safety issues from developing. The rotisserie process at Boston Market involves chickens that sit in warming units for hours after cooking, creating conditions where bacterial growth can occur if temperatures aren't maintained properly. Former employees report that temperature monitoring was inconsistent and that chickens often sat longer than safe holding times allowed. Cross-contamination occurs when the same prep surfaces are used for different meat items without adequate sanitization. The limited kitchen space means that multiple proteins are prepared in close proximity, increasing the likelihood of bacterial transfer between products. Storage practices for raw chickens before cooking often violate food safety guidelines, with birds stored at improper temperatures or in conditions that promote bacterial growth. Former managers describe receiving chicken deliveries that showed signs of temperature abuse but were still used in production. The carving and serving process creates additional contamination risks when the same utensils are used for multiple chickens without proper cleaning. Former employees report that during busy periods, proper utensil sanitation was often skipped to maintain service speed. Temperature control equipment frequently malfunctions, resulting in rotisserie units that don't maintain consistent cooking or holding temperatures. Former cooks describe chickens that were undercooked in some areas while being overcooked in others due to equipment problems. Quality control standards focus more on appearance than actual safety, with employees trained to look for visual cues rather than using thermometers to verify proper internal temperatures. This approach misses safety problems that aren't visible from the outside. The side dish preparation often involves using the same equipment and surfaces that handle raw chicken, creating contamination pathways that affect the entire meal rather than just the meat portion. These 7 restaurants represent a pattern of meat handling practices that prioritize speed and profit over customer safety. From inadequate temperature control to cross-contamination risks to poor storage practices, dining at these establishments means accepting risks that most customers don't realize they're taking. Smart diners can protect themselves by choosing restaurants with visible food preparation areas, asking questions about cooking methods and food safety practices, and trusting their instincts when something seems off about their meal. Your health is worth more than the convenience of familiar chain restaurants that cut corners on meat safety. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Now you're officially more informed than most customers. Like and subscribe to help us keep the spotlight on the food industry's best-kept secrets. And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.